would like to welcome everyone to the Henry County Zoning Advisory Board meeting for Thursday, July 25th, 2019. This week, Henry County has been working through a cyber incident which affected the technology system. As a result of these limitations, tonight's meeting is being recorded in-house and will be posted online at a later date. Tonight's live broadcast may be limited or unavailable. We appreciate your patience. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please fill out a public hearing speaking card. A total of 10 minutes will be allowed for anyone wishing to speak in favor of a case and 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition of a case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they must share the 10-minute slot. When you are speaking, please face the board and not the audience. If you turn to face the audience, we will assume that you have completed. We will now hear the Invocation and Pledge by Mr. Brown.
Please stand. Father God in heaven, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the presence of these, your citizens of Henry County, Father, and we thank you for the presence of the board members and staff that are here this evening. We ask that we take into consideration the understanding that each other is representing, and we ask that you continue to bless this county and this president and the nation as we move forward in doing the will of God, Father. These and other blessings we ask in the name of our Father, Jesus Christ. Thank you. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is now called to order. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have
second.
a second? I have a second. All in favor? Motion carries. Stacy, do we have anything in-house?
Yes, sir. We do have, we want to make the comment that the following item has been tabled by the applicant until further notice. This is case number RZ 1915, and it's for LGS Holdings Group 2013 LLC of Decatur, Georgia. They would request a rezoning from RA to MU for property located in Henry County off of Wildwood Road in Clayton County in land lot 13 of the 3rd, consisting of 105.83 acres for a single-family residential subdivision in Henry County District 2, but it will not be heard tonight.
Okay, all right. So do I have a motion to accept the agenda? And that's with...
That's all of our planning comments.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right. And if that's all the planning, we'd like to hear the first case, please.
Yes, sir. Conditional use, CU 1907, General Holdings Unlimited, LLC of Monroe, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 1496 Millers Mill Road in land lots 27 and 28 of the 11th District. The property consists of 89.01 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a conservation subdivision in District 4. And the report is presented by Ms. Jewel Richardson, Planner 1. Okay.
Good evening, Chair and board members.
Good evening.
This conditional use request is for a conservation subdivision located at 1496 Millers Mill Road. The property is also requesting a rezoning from RA to R3, and which will be heard later in the agenda, for a subdivision of 144 lots. A conservation subdivisions is allowed with a conditional use in any single-family residential or mixed-use zoning district to be developed with the same number of lots that would be allowed under a conventional subdivision design. The lots are allowed by right to be as small as 10,890 square feet with a minimum 40% of area preserved for permanent open space. The applicant is proposing a total of 46.8% of open space. Having that been said, staff recommends approval for the applicant's request, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? Mr. Carmichael?
Mr. Chairman, first, I want to indicate that there's a companion zoning request that runs along with this, and I, again, do not feel that it is proper that we consider the conditional use before we establish what the zoning would be.
If you don't mind, can I answer that? So for this conditional use, you guys will be making a decision today. With the rezoning case that you will hear later in today's meeting, will just be a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. So if this is just an added touch to the rezoning, it's not a deciding. If you recommend approval or you say you guys want to approve the conditional use today, that does not mean the rezoning will be approved tonight. It has to go before the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, but according to your presentation, you presume that we are going to approve RA3 for this particular applicant.
Well, this board will not approve I said they are requesting a rezoning from RA to R3. They haven't been granted the rezoning.
Clarify just a moment. This item is first on the agenda. As Jewel had said, this item will be decided by this board. The rest of the items on the agenda, including the associated item request for R3, is simply a recommendation. And it's typical to have cases first on the agenda that this board will actually decide. That being said, conservation subdivision is allowable in the zoning districts that Ms. Richardson had stated, so single family, mixed use, and so forth. So in the case that the Board of Commissioners denies the applicant's rezoning request, the conditional use for conservation subdivision could still be applied at a later date or even with the RA.
Okay, well, with that in mind, if the current zoning is RA, residential agriculture, what is the density permitted under the current zoning? How many lots would be permitted?
I believe it's one, up to one.
So that would be approximately 8 and 9, well, 95.
Now, Mr. Carmichael, and Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, the yield plan has to be based upon a layout of lots that could actually be developed. And when we're talking about the RA zoning district, it's a little bit different than the density that's prescribed by the future land use map. So in actuality, to develop an RA subdivision, there are minimum 2-acre lots. So we're looking at a density that's less than 0.5.
Okay. Are you complete, Mr.
No,
Carmichael?
I have another question.
Okay.
I'm still trying to understand how do you arrive at a density of 144 lots?
That is, the 144 lots is what they are proposing to put on. So when you hear the rezoning case, they're requesting a rezoning from RA to R3 and proposing 144 lots. So for example, if this conditional use is approved tonight, the conditional use standards of a conditional use subdivision will be held to a RA zoning if the rezoning request is not approved by the Board of Commissioners. So approving the conditional use tonight will not approve a R3 rezoning.
Exactly. And we would, what that means is that they would have the option of moving forward with a conservation layout. But if they're denied for their their R3, then they would, and if they wanted to apply this conservation layout to RA, they would need to start over with a different yield plan that affected a development that could actually be developed in RA. But that is not the applicant's request. The applicant's request is both, to be rezoned by the Board of Commissioners to R3 so that they could apply the yield plan that's being presented to be developed in a conservation type format.
And follow-up question. If we approve the conservation conditional use, are we at the same time approving 144 lots?
No, sir.
No.
All right, Mr. Richard.
All right, I think I have a question along the same lines. All right, currently the property is zoned RA residential agricultural with, and I believe that's, I think that's 1 acre lots with county water system. But what if both sewer and water is provided? Is that still
That's
1 acre lots?
Not quite. If one were to simply divide the property into 5 or fewer lots, then yes, one could create 1 acre lots. That is absolutely true. But to create a development that has to meet the standards of a major subdivision, an RA subdivision requires a minimum 2 acre lots.
All right, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. If not, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant. Would the applicant please come forward? Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Steve Moore, Moorbass Consulting, 1350 Keys Ferry Court, McDonough, Georgia. I'm here tonight representing General Holdings Unlimited for the conditional use request. As Joel mentioned, the property is 89 acres located on the south side of Miller's Mill Road. I understand there's some confusion with the placement of these items being so far separated on the agenda, but hopefully I can kind of communicate what we're trying to do. As stated, this request is just simply the conditional use to allow this property to be developed as a conservation subdivision regardless of what zoning we end up, whether it's left RA, whether it's zoned to what we're requesting ultimately. But our request tonight under this application is just the conditional use, and it's a development option. He doesn't have to develop it that way, but it is an option that we would like to preserve in the event we're successful moving forward through the rezoning process. So this is just a different representation of the plan that we've put together. So as a conservation subdivision, again, regardless of the underlying zoning, a couple of things that are key to that zoning or to that conditional use. One is that the developer will be required to put this 100-foot buffer along Miller's Mill Road. The developer will be required at a minimum to provide 50-foot buffers around the perimeter of the property. Be required to preserve wetlands, significant slopes, streams, floodplain in primary conservation areas to be protected in perpetuity. And then 40%, again, 40% of the overall site as open space. It does allow for a reduction in lot size if you meet those objectives of the conservation subdivision ordinance. That's the plan that we're proposing. Again, I think it's pertinent to probably talk about the specifics of the layout as we move into the rezoning section of this, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got regarding this layout or the conservation subdivision or the conditional use.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant? Okay, Mr. Carmack.
It's more, under the conservation conditional use, it requires that walking trails, bike paths, those sorts of amenities be included. Will this subdivision have those?
Yes, sir. There'll be passive and active recreation areas in that open space area. And as you can see, we've intentionally designed the subdivision where that open space continues throughout the entire property. A lot of times it's real easy to dump all the open space in the back of the property, push all your development up to the front to minimize, development costs and length of street. This actually does a little bit better job of incorporating that open space in the project. Every lot just about backs up to open space, so you don't have a backyard directly adjacent to a backyard. But yes, there will be recreation, walking trails and that type of stuff within that open space area.
Mr. Richard.
Yes, Mr. Moore, in the letter that you sent to the planning staff, I believe it was dated June the 4th, 2019, you indicated that the Henry County Water Authority actually owns the property that's directly south of this property. I believe it's a large land application area.
Yes, sir.
For sewage treatment. But you said that you had a meeting scheduled with the Water Authority staff to discuss a sewer easement to reach this property, but I don't think it says anything further in the reports as to whether that is certain or not. Could you update this board on?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We've met with the Water Authority. They are our immediate southern neighbor, which is another reason why we've kind of left a large area back there as additional buffer. But we have met with them. They've agreed to give us, they said we don't need to give you an easement because it's on our property. But they've agreed to give us permission to access that. And since then, we've tested for rock, and we've done a whole lot of survey work just to make sure that we could indeed connect to their main, which we've confirmed that we can. And so right now, they're on board, subject to us taking it to the next step of actual design.
Is there a sewer line that would be extended through their property to?
It would be, yeah, it would go maybe 100 feet into their property. The sewer's just on their side of the property, about 100 feet from our property line. So we'd have to cross the creek, and then we would tie into one of their main right there, the Cotton Indian Creek interceptor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. King, have anything? Okay. All right, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. We're not related, are we?
No, I don't think so.
For the record, we're not related.
For the record.
All right, so you had mentioned earlier that if you meet the criteria of the conservation restrictions, that there's an allowable lot size reduction. Is there a minimum on that, how small you can go?
It is. It's a minimum of 1/4 of an acre.
1/4 acre. Is there a number of lots that you're allowed to do that, or any other restrictions considered in that if you meet the other conservation criteria?
As long as you have a yield plan that is what's used to determine the maximum lot yield that's possible on the property based on the zoning that you're requesting, and then there's no limitation on the number of 1/4 acre lots so long as it doesn't exceed what's on the yield plan, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Brown.
Mr. Moore.
Yes, sir.
The green space that you reserve for the residents, what percentage of that is usable green space that they actually can partake?
I would say, and I'll show you a map here that's probably, actually, the map Jewel had up may show it better. The only area on this property that's not technically buildable is this lake, and there's a stream right here. And obviously, there's a dam right here, so that wouldn't be, but there's no floodplain. It's really, the majority of the site is developable, with the exception of that lake and the stream that feeds it.
Okay, you said there's a dam on there. You know the condition of that dam?
I do not. I do not. We haven't studied that, but we're not, our plan is not proposing to add any more water to that lake. In fact, we'll be taking the water that's getting there now and directing it into a new pond. So I don't know that but certainly if the dam is in disrepair, we'll need to check that out as we get to the final design.
And you said you're going to build a new pond?
Yes, sir. We'll build 2 new ponds on to treat stormwater before it gets to that lake.
Okay, is it on this map anywhere?
Yes, sir. There's a pond. Well, there's actually a pond here. There's a pond here, and there's a pond here.
Okay. And will there be a homeowners association associated?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Mr. Carmen?
Will this be a single part or more than one part?
A single phase?
Part, you're right.
Yeah. I would imagine it'll probably develop in 2 phases.
Mr. Carmichael may be referring to the different types of conservation subdivisions,
Oh.
whether single pod or multiple pod.
It'll be a single pod design.
Okay. That's what I meant.
I apologize. I didn't understand.
Anything else, Mr. Carmen?
No.
Okay, now at this time. All right. Thank you, Ms. Moore. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. Okay. No one's coming forward. We'd also like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the case. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Mark Logan, 305 North Mill Parkway, Cotton Fields 2 Subdivision, which is directly across the street. Directly across the street on Miller's Mill Road, you have 2 subdivisions. Adjacent to this property, you have another subdivision, which the minimum lot size in these 3 subdivisions is 1.5 acres. The minimum square footage in these homes are 3,000 square feet. Now, you're going to allow 144 homes on 89 acres on quarter-acre lots. You are devaluing our property severely. Now, I understand there is a need for R3 developments. There's plenty of land out on 155 East Lake. The airport down Miller's Mills for sale. This could be developed anywhere. You are going to crush any custom homes ever built in this county if you allow this. Because we have custom homes on this end of Miller's Mill, you're going to allow this to come in. There's 2 entrances on the Miller's Mill Road, which will not handle the traffic. So, this is not right. And we all bought here, we all built here because of the open space and the acreage of our homes. And now you're going to allow 144 homes on 89 acres. What makes this attractive is one big wide open field. It's an old farm place. That's the reason the developer wants it so bad. Leave it at R1, take it from R8 to R1, minimum lot size 2 acres, and let them build custom homes there. Have no problem with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board, my name is Robert Kolpak. I'm at 272 Cotton Indian Creek Road, which is at when Miller's Mill goes over 155, it becomes Selfridge, which becomes Cotton Indian. I would think that's going to be what a quarter acre would look like on a house. With what that gentleman just said, the average property in that area, per the Vivian Thomas, our commissioner, she said it's between $346,000 and $386,000. So if we add these properties, I do not believe they're going to hold up Also, just before that, there's already been 371 dwellings approved right on Miller's Mill before that are going to be between 200 and 400,000. So Miller's Mill is kind of getting a little discombobulated with what is there. Custom homes that were built, $400,000 houses, and now we want to put in affordable housing. There's a lot of lake areas in this county to go. Fairview Road is a good spot. Anywhere in Ellenwood is Henry County. Not sure why we want to ruin the Miller's Mill area. That is our schools currently. We have trailers at our schools. So I don't know that our commissioners and our Board of Education are on the same page with what we're approving. But when they aren't on the same page, we suffer. There is a lot of people selling and moving, even a Move Henry thing. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to challenge that we do the right stuff. If we put the right housing on these properties, and I will give you a picture of a $400,000 house. That would be the type of development that would fit on Miller's Mill Road. It would hold up because I can assure you the first house I showed you would not hold to that kind of value. And look at the space between the properties. To me, acre lots, houses that are 3,000 square foot bricks, instead of just approving this. So I'm glad we want to approve, and I'm glad that people want to come and develop in Henry County, but let's have some standards, because what we'll have is $120,000 houses, because when these things don't get moved into, they'll get bought out by landlords and they'll rent out, and the area will go where? Down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition of this case tonight? We have about 4.5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, if no one else is coming forward, does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? No additional questions? Okay. If that, let's call the case.
CU 1907 General Holdings Unlimited LLC of Monroe, Georgia requests a conditional use for property located at 1496 Millers Mill Road in land lots 27 and 28 of the 11th District. The property consists of 89.01 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a conservation subdivision in District 4, and the report was presented by Ms. Jewel Richardson, Planner 1.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion on case CU 19-07 that we accept the staff recommendations to approve the conditional use.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion I'm sorry, all in favor? Let me see the hands again. We have a 3-2 vote. Motion carries. Okay. Call the next case, please.
C 1906 John Jordan Hedge Walker, PC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests rezoning from C1 Neighborhood Commercial to MU Mixed Use for property located east of Highway 1941 and west of Old Highway 3 and Old Griffin Road in land lots 109 and 84 of the 3rd District. The property consists of 40.0 plus or minus acres, and the request is for future advanced technology industrial development in the District 2. Presented by Stacy Jordan Rudasil, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
Board members, the request before you tonight is illustrated on the overhead and also in your exhibit books. The property is outlined in green, has frontage on 1941 and on Old Highway 3 to the east. The property is zoned C1. The applicant is requesting MU mixed use. The aerial shows that the area is largely undeveloped at this time, and the southern boundary of the subject property is the Spalding County line. The future land use map shows commercial for that area on the east side of 1941. It shows mixed use for the area on the west side of 1941. And the area on the west side of 1941 corresponds with the county's megasite initiative. The applicant's preliminary conceptual site plan shows a few different types of improvements, of structures. The uses that they have indicated include office, retail, restaurant, biomedical, pharmaceutical, advanced manufacturing, and so forth. The request for mixed use does require a change in the future land use map, which will be later on in our agenda. So the request before you at this time is to make a recommendation on the rezoning request from C1 to MU. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and we've noted that the applicant has stated that the intensity, the size of this development will not meet the threshold to require state evaluation through the development of regional impact process. So that is our first condition, is that this site will not exceed or even meet that threshold for a DRI. The conditions also have to do with the uses. The conditions have to do with primarily traffic on Old Highway 3, since that is a county road, and will leave the 1941 access to the Georgia Department of Transportation. Staff does recommend approval with 8 conditions. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? If there's no question for staff, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is John Jordan. I'm with the law firm of Hecht Walker, PC. I'm the applicant for this item, and I also represent the owners who are Sam Betsack and Joseph New. I do have a few handouts. I think I handed out the wrong one earlier. If I may approach and hand these out. Again, this property before the board today is approximately 40 acres of undeveloped wooded land right there on the Spalding-Henry County line. And if you look at the cover page of the handout, I'm going to try this. Let's see. You can see the subject property there on the left, Spalding County just beyond it, and the planned megasite, Henry County megasite to the right there. There is a trailer park that is just between the subject property and the Spalding County line, but essentially this goes up to the line. The megasite across the street has been planned by Henry County to provide a wide range of commercial, office, and industrial options to attract businesses and jobs in this part of the county. It's zoned MU, and what we're here to do today is request essentially the same leeway, the same zoning, MU for the same types of purposes. These, what we would be proposing would be consistent and actually complement the mega site and could include, again, advanced manufacturing and storage, as well as professional, scientific, and technical services. Some examples of this could be pharmaceutical manufacturing and storage, medical device manufacturing and storage, web design studios, data centers, and medical and dental clinics. We'd also like to, essentially to narrow it down, what we're looking for is flex space for office and light industrial, and to reserve the commercial and retail component to be able to offer that to prospective buyers as well. What we're trying to do is complement the approach to bring business and industry to that side of the county, what the county is right now trying to do with the mega site. It is 40 acres, so it's large enough and undeveloped enough to accommodate these different types of uses. It's still in a primarily rural area of the county, and it's in a heavy commercial industrial section of 1941. Some examples of what is north and south along this section of 1941. You have to the north, Sidney Lee Welding Supply. You got Sweetie's Flea Market. You got a motel RV park, automotive diesel repair, Sunnyside RV sales, R&R machinery, a tractor equipment sales and service store, and Zeb's automotive repair. This request would be consistent with those uses and actually take it up a notch to attract advanced manufacturing and additional uses to the county. Due to the rural nature of this area, there's not a large enough clientele base to be able to accommodate just the restriction to commercial, which is the reason why we need the flexibility to add these other options for businesses to come to this side of the county. Without the requested flexibility and the zoning that's being made of across the street, my client won't be able to market and won't be able to sell or otherwise use its property, which we would contend to be tantamount to a taking and arbitrary and capricious. But with that being said, it would complement, again, the uses for the mega site, as well as the ultimate goal of attracting businesses and employment opportunities to this part of Henry County. And we would like to bring attention to just one of the conditions that staff makes, and that is to approve but limit the uses to office, retail, restaurant, biomedical, pharmaceutical, and advanced tech manufacturing is permitted under the mixed-use zoning district. We would just like to be able to incorporate light industrial as well to provide a little bit more flexibility. Some examples of this: there would not be a warehouse distribution center. That's not allowed under the corridor, highway corridor overlay, and we would not be putting heavy industrial. Some examples of what we would reserve for options for potential buyers and tenants would be food, textiles, and related products, wood, paper, and printing products, cosmetic and pharmaceutical storage and production, electronic equipment, appliance, components manufacturer, and construction-related businesses. And those are all uses that are already being made up and down 1941 in that area. We'd like to also be able to provide for those as well. I believe some of those uses are light industrial are also going to be in the mega site. So again, we're just asking to be able to complement that site and help with the goal of bringing businesses to the side of Henry County.
Does the board have questions for the applicant?
I do. Could you please tell me which of the conditions recommended by staff that you're asking for the adjustment on?
Sure. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be condition 2.
And then I would ask Stacy the best way to handle that. Is that something that should have been taken care of before tonight? So we're actually making an adjustment.
It would have been great to have had the discussion before tonight. And so these items that are in condition 2, they are taken primarily from the preliminary conceptual site plan. That being said, there's nothing to keep this board from making a recommendation. And if it's your pleasure to include these light industrial type uses within condition 2 or a whole separate condition, that would be very appropriate. But I want to state for the record that at no time was it staff's understanding that outside storage was being proposed as a principal use. So no truck parking or tractor trailer drop lots or anything like that was ever a part of the recommendation to my understanding. So the talk of storage and so forth, that to my understanding was never intended to mean outside storage for tractor trailer parking.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, not exactly. What we're trying to do, there will be some trucks coming in and out, which was provided for in some of the conditions for going on to, I think it was Highway 3. But I'm not talking about storage per se. It would be incidental to the manufacturing of, say, pharmaceutical and cosmetics. But this would be part of the original rezoning request was for flex space for office, commercial, and light industrial uses, and this would be the component of the light industrial. Again, not heavy. We're not looking to do warehouse distribution, not looking to do primary storage. It would be part of the manufacturing and storage, which is part of what is anticipated across the street at the mega site.
And staff has no objection to that. But what I would think is that if you intend to include additional uses, if that's something that you want, if we could go through them again.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Stacey, let me ask you this. The applicant's asking for condition number 2 to be pulled from this list. Would the staff pull their recommendation if that number 2 was not included at this time? In other words, is this list the complete list that gave you all the reason to give the recommendation to approve, and if that wasn't in it, would you change your recommendation?
Well, I have to say that the applicant's request is not supported by our future land use map. But the applicant is addressing that by requesting a change in our future land use map. And we'll hear that later on in the agenda.
Sure.
The applicant's request for mixed use is intended to be complementary to the mega site initiative, which is just across 1941, and that's something that staff wants to encourage. So we highly recommend a condition that clarifies the uses. And if it has to say it's limited to these, or if it has to include an item that says it will not be this, however it needs to be worded, we would recommend such a condition.
Mr. Cartman.
Does the staff need additional time to evaluate the conditional uses that he's indicating tonight?
No, sir. What the applicant seems to be proposing is to add light industrial uses, which is not, it's not in conflict with the mega site initiative. So we don't have an objection to that. The applicant has stated that it's not the proposal to include outside storage as a principal use, but only ancillary to these other industrial type uses. Staff has no objection to that.
Mr. Richard.
Well, on this package that was just given to us, it's a little bit confusing in that it shows several different site plan layouts. Now the staff reports said that the applicant submitted 2 alternate concept plans, one being a series of 10,000 square foot buildings with office and commercial and light industrial. I guess referring to the Park 42 Industrial Park on Highway 42 South, and a recreational complex. So which one of these, site plans are we going with?
I understand, Mr. Risher, but I think that's a better question for the applicant.
What we're requesting is to go with site plan number 1. Part of the discussion was if that was not palatable to have some options for other arrangements and uses. But what we're going for and what staff has recommended approval subject to conditions for is the first site plan.
Is that the one that's based on the aerial photograph, or is it one of these that's on the screen?
The aerial photograph would encompass them all. It's all wooded property right now.
To answer your question, Mr. Risher, it would be this site plan that's illustrated on the overhead, and it does appear to be based upon the aerial photograph.
For you, the applicant mentioned that this is in an overlay district, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it's in the Highway Corridor Overlay District, and that's why we didn't reiterate the design requirements of the overlay.
Okay, and does that allow for light industrial?
Yes. It doesn't allow for the warehousing distribution. It doesn't allow for mini warehouses. It doesn't allow for pawn shops and other types of uses. But the other light industrial type uses, yes, would be allowed.
Okay. And I guess my question for the applicant now, how do you get around the warehouse side of the light industrial?
We would not be proposing warehousing as a primary storage. Obviously, if you're going to manufacture, you're going to have trucks take it away, but it's not going to be a warehouse or even self-storage that we're proposing there. Again, that would be prohibited by the overlay, so it wouldn't even need to be a condition to the zoning. It's already prohibited.
Okay. And one other question, your main purpose for wanting to request the light industrial is for what reason?
Well, it's complementary to the other light industrial up and down that area, 1941. And what we're trying to do is attract industry to that area. And in order to market the property and bring people to that area, you want to have a broader base to do that. That's what the mega site's doing across the street, and that's what we're trying to complement as well.
Any additional questions?
I do. Stacy, in modifying this number 2 condition, can it be as broad as just saying to add light industrial uses?
Yes, ma'am.
Can be that simple?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there an opportunity?
Well, what I would recommend is that it would be helpful to staff if it's the pleasure of the board to allow those uses that are permitted uses under the M1 zoning district.
And is there an opportunity for the applicant, if this request is approved tonight without his change to condition number 2, to come back and pick up that light industrial use at another time?
Well, this board is being asked to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, so there will be a second hearing, and that would be the only other time.
That they could add it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And so let me just temper my previous comment when I said those permitted uses under M1, but those uses that aren't expressly prohibited by the Highway Corridor Overlay District. Because warehousing distribution is otherwise allowed under M1.
Right.
Now, I think that was our intent as well as what was just said.
I understand. I guess from my perspective, and probably I'm guessing from everyone else's, it would have been nice to have had you make this request of staff prior to coming to this meeting.
Sure.
I would just say that.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions.
All right. Mr. Richard.
And now, speaking of the of the highway overlay district, I think, which applies in this case. I don't believe that allows for outside storage of materials. Was it your intention to allow certain materials to be stored outside?
Not to my knowledge at all. That's never been brought up as a possibility. And of course, if it's prohibited, then we would abide by the highway corridor prohibition.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. If not, you may be seated, sir. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. Okay. No one's coming forward. We'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Again, 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Okay. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant? Okay. All right. If not, call the case.
RC 1906, John Jordan H. Walker, PC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from C1 Neighborhood Commercial to MU Mixed Use for property located east of Highway 1941 and west of Old Highway 3 and Old Griffin Road in land lots 109 and 84 of the 3rd District. The property consists of 40.0 plus or minus acres, and the request is for future advanced technology industrial development in District 2, presented by Stacy Jordan, Rudolph, Chief Planner.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I do. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board approve this request as recommended by staff. This is RZ 1906 with the conditions as is. The county commissioners want to add your light industrial use. You can go to them and ask them, but I'm going to leave it as is and go with staff recommendation.
Okay. All right, you have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Call the next case, please.
RC 1910, Bryce B. Choi, Lucem Enterprises, LLC of Peachtree City, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C2 General Commercial for property located at 100 Mount Carmel Road in land lot 128 of the District 7th. The property consists of 2.07 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a shopping center. District 3, presented by Jules Richardson, Planner 1.
Good evening, Chair and board members. The rezoning request is for a property located at 100 Mount Carmel Road. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from RA to C2 General Commercial for general retail development. The applicant intent is to adjoin their property with the east property which they own, and it is currently zone C2. The proposed development is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and future land use map. The future land use designation is mixed use. The staff recommends approval of the request with one condition. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff? Mr. Richard?
Yes, could you show on the zoning map on the overhead, there's property that's adjacent to this site that's at the corner of Mount Carmel Road and Jonesboro Road. Was that recently zoned C2? I thought that site had come before us fairly recently.
From my knowledge, it's not recent.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had for now.
I know that in the past year or so, there was a property on the north side of Jonesboro Road from the intersection with Mount Carmel Road, which was zoned C3. But I'm not familiar with a recent rezoning to C2, at least not at this time.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions for staff? Okay. If not, we'd like to call the applicant forward. Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Wayne Smith. I'm owner of D.W. Smith Design Group at 23 Hampton Street, McDonough, Georgia, and here on behalf of the owner, Dr. Bryce Choi and Lucem Enterprises. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add to staff recommendation?
Certainly, we're aware of the requirements of the Highway Corridor District Overlay. We incorporated those into our plan, that's conceptual plan that's a part of the rezoning application, so we understand it doesn't matter whether we agree to that condition or not. Those rules already apply, so certainly we accept that. And again, we incorporated that into the plan that was presented for your consideration.
All right. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Richard?
Yes, your site plan that was submitted to the staff that's in our report, it actually shows this parcel, which is shaped as a triangle. It would seem to be difficult to develop by itself. Is it the intention for it to be joined with a larger project that's at the corner of Mount Carmel and Jonesboro Roads?
Yes, sir, Mr. Richard. The same owner owns both parcels, and so it has been indicated by staff, the larger parcel at the intersection of Mount Carmel and Jonesboro Road was previously zoned C2. And so with the same ownership and with the rather unusual configuration, we're asking this parcel to be zoned C2 accordingly, and it would certainly grant greater flexibility in terms of the type of development that could be accommodated there. And it also makes it easier to apply the setbacks and landscape buffers and pedestrian corridors that are a part of the highway corridor overlay. It makes it much easier to incorporate that into the overall project in a fashion that makes sense and would then be available to be connected to if other parcels in either direction were developed at some future point.
Okay, and I have a question for staff. I believe that almost directly across from this, from this small parcel, there's I think about 28 acres. Is that, zoned? I thought that was recently rezoned for multifamily. Is that?
Yes.
Although it's not shown on the map.
Mr. Richard, we do think that we have to make sure that our maps are updated, but in some instances, especially with recent rezonings, we may miss one.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to get the picture of what's actually
Yes, sir.
going on around here. So. All right, so I believe it's across. I believe it's across the road from RM Multifamily.
Yes, where my pen is located, that is the parcel that was rezoned for RM.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So.
Yes, yeah.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. I have one question.
Yes, sir.
What's the intent? What's your client actually intent going with?
It is to rezone this parcel, which again, as I told you, is owned by the same group that owns the larger parcel, to make one parcel that frankly gives greater flexibility and would be more easily marketed. There are no immediate plans at this point for any specific development.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there's no additional questions, you may be seated, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor. Okay. If not, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Okay. Does the board have additional questions for staff or the applicant? If not, you may call the case.
RZ 1910, Bryce B. Choi, Lusum Enterprises LLC of Peachtree City, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C2 General Commercial for property located at 100 Mount Carmel Road in Land Lot 128 of the 7th District. The property consists of 2.07 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a shopping center. This is District 3, and the report was presented by Ms. Jewel Richardson, Planner 1.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I have a motion to rezone the property containing 2.07 acres to C2 according to the staff's recommendation and for conformance with the highway corridor overlay district.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion. I have a second by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Here, the next case, please.
RZ 1911, Greg K. Hecht Walker, PC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R3 Single Family Residence to C3 Highway Commercial for property located at 101 Highway 138 East in land lots 33 and 64 of the 12th District. The property consists of 1.393 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a gas station and convenience store with associated commercial tenant spaces. This is District 4, and the report is presented by Mrs. Yuritsa Nieves, Planner 2.
Good evening, Chair and board members.
Good evening.
The request before you tonight is a request to rezone the property located at 101 Highway 138 East, as highlighted in green on the overhead and in your exhibit books, from R3 Single Family Residence to C3 Highway Commercial for the purpose of developing a gas station, convenience store with associated commercial tenant spaces. The area surrounding the subject property consists of a variety of zoning districts. There are C3 zoned properties to the south and southwest of the subject property. There's also an OI, office institutional, property directly to the southeast. There's also extensive commercial and industrial development along Highway 42, which is just to the south of the subject property. The subject property has a commercial future land use designation. And as you can see by the future land use map, commercial development is expected to expand along Highway 138 to the west as the road turns into North Henry Boulevard. Finally, the subject property is within the Highway Corridor Overlay District and is required to comply with the development standards of the overlay. With that being said, staff recommends approval of the applicant's request with no conditions. I'll place the site plan for your review on the screen.
Thank you. Does the board have questions for staff? Mr. Carmichael?
The applicant's request meet the minimum setback requirements?
I believe I believe it does on their conceptual site plan. Regardless, they would have to comply. These plans are not for construction, not for development, so they would have to comply with setbacks or receive the appropriate variance if they want to vary from those requirements.
These preliminary conceptual site plans, we would prefer to be just as accurate as they could be. They're certainly not required to be engineered, but there may be some aspects that are not shown but will be required in the case that they are approved. For example, a buffer, highway corridor requires 10-foot multi-use pathways and streetlights and trees and so forth. And even if these features are not shown on the preliminary site plan, they will be required at the time of development.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, one last question. Is there a residential property immediately adjacent?
Yes, I'll show on the zoning map. So on the zoning map, there is R3 directly to the north of the property, and there is RA, undeveloped RA, directly to the west. Oh, excuse me, and R3 to the east across from Love Drive.
Okay. In that circumstance, is the applicant required by ordinance to meet certain requirements in recognition of that condition?
Yes, so at properties adjacent, commercial zone properties adjacent to residential, similar to industrial adjacent to residential, are required to meet buffer requirements of the code. Gas stations specifically also have supplemental standards which require buffers.
Just right off, do you know what's the distance of that buffer from residential to the gas station?
Yes, sir. In this case, it's 40 feet, a 40-foot buffer. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the supplemental standards for gas stations requires a fence in addition to that buffer.
Okay. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, if not, we'd like to call the applicant forward. Please state your name and address for the record once again.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. Again, it's John Jordan. I'm with Hecht Walker PC, the applicant for this item, and represent the owner of the property, Ms. Pinky Patel, who's here tonight. This is, again, for 101 Highway East, Highway 138 East in Stockbridge, Georgia, at the intersection of where it becomes North Henry, and 138 becomes North Henry and Highway 42. The proposed use, rezoning from residential to commercial C3 for a gas station, convenience store with 2 attached suites to lease out, is consistent, again, with the future land use map, which requires or provides for this property to be commercial, not residential, as it's currently zoned. Right now, it's incompatible with the future land use map. Our rezoning request would actually make it compatible. It's also consistent with the county's comprehensive land use plan, which intends for commercial development to go along this portion of 138 all the way up to Love Drive right there, which our property is within. So it is as Henry County has planned as well. The primary building would be a 7,500 square foot primary structure that would consist of 4,500 square feet for a convenience store with 1,500 to 1,500 square foot adjacent suites that would be storefront property that my client would lease out to other businesses. As far as access, this location is ideal for a gas station convenience store. It's on the corner, so it provides for dual access. You'll be having access onto 138 by a right-in access point, and then you'll also have access by Love Drive. There are plans for 6 pumps with a canopy. And again, you might see on the site plan before you that a decorative fence is already in the plans to help buffer the residential properties. My client is committed to providing a quality development here. And again, it will be subject to the heightened standards of the highway corridor overlay. My client's brother-in-law, who's here with us today as well, Mr. Peter Patel, would be the operator of this business, and he has an extensive, successful history in operating these types of businesses. He owns and operates several convenience store gas stations in Georgia, including one. I've got pictures of the storefront in the packet that I handed out. This is actually, it's marked West Point, but this is one of his storefronts in Macon. This would, of course, be subject to whatever the overlay standards are, if anything needs to be added or heightened development standards added. But as you can see, what we're looking to do here is a quality development that would be run by somebody that's known and been successful in this business. Mr. Patel, again, is here today. If you have any questions about the operation of this business, he'd be glad to answer any of those. But as staff has recommended approval without condition of this item, we would request that the board recommend approval of rezoning the property from residential to commercial C3.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Moore.
My question is either for the applicant or for staff, whoever wants to answer. The facade of this building, is there any standards or any requirements that has a certain type of material list they have to use? Could you tell me about that, please?
Yes, that's one of the reasons we didn't recommend any conditions, because all of those concerns are addressed by the highway corridor overlay, including its mainly design standards, pedestrian lighting, street trees, landscaping, sidewalks, specific materials. So this building would not be allowed to have a metal facing, for example. It would be required to be all sides brick, stone, or stucco, capped at 40%, and glass, of course.
Thank you. Any additional questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. If not, you may be seated, sir. At this time, we would like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the case? Okay. If not, we'd also like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Margaret Ann Love. I live at 1838 Old Conyers Road in Stockbridge, Georgia, 30281. And I was born and raised in Stockbridge. And my family owns property on Love Drive, off of Love Drive. I don't have a problem with the C3 because I know eventually it's all going to be C3 there because it's building up. But I do have a problem with what they're doing to Love Drive. I have a picture here. Where did I put this? I guess y'all can blow it up. Yeah. Let's see, we turn around this way. Okay. Yeah, turn it around this way so you can see the property. Okay, can y'all blow up this little circle there? No, this circle here, beside the green, where the property is located, right there at the green. Right here, I'm sorry, okay. This property right here. And you see this little circle right here? Right there. Blow that up. I have a problem with that. That's a cul-de-sac there. Love Drive has been there since 1960-something. Now they are cutting off access to Love Drive for us, all the people that live down Love Drive. My mother has property on Love Drive. My sister has 2 parcels. My brother has a parcel, and my other brother lives on Love Terrace. And they're coming in trying to, it's blanking out again, let's see. I couldn't print it out. I found it, but I couldn't print it out. It wouldn't let me print it out. But do you see where I'm talking about right there? The cul-de-sac. And then they wanted a right in and a right out there on 138. So they only offered them a left turn there. So they had to go over and try to get the Love Drive. But I always thought that was commercial property because they do have, Mr. Royce is operating a auto repair shop there in a metal building, which is not shown on this print. They just show the house there. but the metal building is over to the right. And he is operating a commercial auto repair shop there, because he has fixed my sister's car and many others that we know. And it's been there for a while, and they already have a asphalt drive coming out of Love Drive, which has been used for a long time. I was born and raised there. I know Mr. Jarvis, I know the people that they bought it from, and that metal building has been there forever. He used it as his shop. And they're trying to cut off our access. It's like they're doing everything for them. They're inconveniencing everybody else for their property. I don't mind what they're putting there, but they're putting on 1.39 acres. And then behind there, that green property right there, my sister's property is right to the left of it, and my Babs is right to the right, and my sister has a house there. But my nephew lives in he rents her son. He rents that property right there. And that filling station being right there is filling station, gas station, and 2 tenant properties. And that wouldn't, the lights and the noise would be a very inconvenience. And like I said, and they're already using it as commercial property there. And the guy that's running it is, what I understand, they call him Mr. Royce. And you can check on that. But I don't have a problem with the C3 because I have the property there beside it. That was my parents' property. They're deceased now. And then my aunt owns the property right next to it. And we have a light there at the property. And they have come to me many times wanting to lease that easement there that we have. That's an easement for my nephew to use, and it's a driveway for our property too. And they've come to me many times wanting to lease that easement there, the driveway coming out, for a year, and they spent $25,000 on it, and then dedicate it back to the county, the road back to the county. And I disagreed with them. They wanted to build a fence on this side of the property, and that would ruin our property. But I'm also a assistant broker with Carwell Banker, and I do have that piece of property listed, and the other piece of property, it's like one, I think I have a picture of it here. Oh, okay, they can't hear me, okay. Can y'all hear me? Okay, sorry about that. This is my first time being here, so. Well, no, I'm not. I probably have that one. Okay. Well, I must have not brought it up here. But anyway, the property right next to the property that used to be Jarvis property, where the green is, I have that listed, and then one on Love Drive there. And it would mess up the value of that property, but not the Love Drive, which I don't know what's going to happen because they say they're not going to develop that until 2025. And I can see most of it, what's going on there, but that's my case.
We have some time left. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the case? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Robert Kolpak, 272 Cotton Indian Creek Road. Question I would have with this is how many more convenience stores do we need in Henry County, along with how many more dollar stores we need? We're becoming a county that we approve convenience stores and dollar stores. Not sure with all the dilapidated property on that 138 that we couldn't go buy a gas station and rehab it and make it look a little nicer. I'm sure they would sell. They haven't taken care of the property. If we don't have conditions in our county to make people upgrade their property, maybe that's something we should put in a future land map and a future standards, because we deserve better. Not that this gas station would be bad, but there's enough on that 138 that we really don't need any more. We can approve it for something else, but fast food, dollar stores, and gas stations, Henry County. Thank you for your time.
have about 3 minutes left. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition of this case? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Tommy Dobson, 20 Reeves Road, Stockbridge. I'm going to speak for my brother. He lives on the opposite side of Love Drive there. He's probably been there close to 40 years. And he tells me about the noise from the station that's already across the street during the middle of the night, dumpsters being emptied, pressure washing in the driveway. This would be right in his door. The light pollution, the noise, the traffic. Love Drive is a small road. I don't recommend this at all.
Okay. We still have about 2 minutes left. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. No one else is coming forward. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant? Yes. Will you please come forward, sir? Okay.
I see in your letter of intent that at some future date you intend to request for a variance for the front yard and the side yard setback and buffer requirements?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
If you are not granted those variances, would you still be able to develop the property as intended?
We would have to do a little bit of redesign to it, but we would still absolutely comply with the standards of the county.
So can you address the concerns that were mentioned here tonight in terms of light and noise pollution problems, and also one person indicated that they would have problems accessing their property on Love Drive if we permitted this?
Sure. As far as the concern with Love Drive, I think we actually share the same concern. We've never seen that rendering before. I don't know if it was an old DOT plat or not, but we want the access from 138 to Love Drive. That would be our second access. So we're not proposing at all to cut off access to Love Drive.
Or to continue down Love Drive in any way.
And as far as the noise and the light, there's a lot of options that can be made under commercial that was intended by the county for this. This option actually would be controlled to be a quality product that would not be a welding or car manufacturing repair shop that has currently been there in the past. It would be a much better developed project that would provide more convenience to the public coming down 138 or down 42 for an option for gas. When you have options for gas close by, you also tend to get competition and lower gas prices. But one of the things that we would be looking at as well, and we're still in discussions, we would love to be able to eventually have an entrance where the easement is that Ms. Love was talking about. That would have to be a deal between Ms. Love and us, but if it's possible, we would love to have that and then actually be able to put a light right there and make it a four-way light, make it even more convenient for the traveling public. But as everybody gets up in the morning and is going to work or coming home, this is another option for them to get gas or any convenience store needs that they may want. And also to address the issue of the current tenant there, I would yield to.
Patricia Capps, I'm a broker. I sold this property and helped them with this plan. And I also want to address the fact that we would be bringing sewer as required, and we have agreed with Henry County to bring sewer to this property. Mrs. Love said that she owns the property next door, and she does, and we did address asking her to allow us to use that easement she has. It's just a dirt easement at this time, and we were willing to pave it and bring it to the traffic light and put in the traffic light. Her property adjoining is for sale, potential commercial. It's also commercial for sale, and I think she's asking around $800,000 for that right now.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask that. I'm going to have to stop you based on the track of where we've been. We've heard the case from the applicant, and we have questions for the applicant, and we don't want to go back with
Okay,
this.
and you
this
asked
project.
about Mr. Royce's place there. He has been given notice to move because it's no longer allowed.
I understand, but
Okay.
let's go strictly with the questions to the applicant. Mr. Richard, did you have something?
Yes, earlier we saw a drawing that showed a cul-de-sac that would I guess dead end Love Drive at Highway 138. Is that a state DOT idea, or is that something that the applicant plans on doing? Or?
Mr. Risher, staff has spoken with Ms. Love on various occasions. Staff only became aware of that schematic earlier today. We were unable to reach, due to the time constraints, we were unable to consult with Henry County DOT and Georgia DOT or GDOT to confirm the current validity of that diagram. Not that we suspect that it may be wrong, but just that it's the most recent version and if it's currently the one in plan. Regardless, if the plans included in this zoning request are valid, or if the schematic from GDOT is valid, the property owner and or developer can come to an agreement with GDOT and Henry County DOT to ensure that their right to reasonable access is ensured.
Yes, because the only proposal I think that's in our report is a recommendation. I guess from the Georgia Department of Transportation, although the notation maybe was made by our own DOT that there would be a right-in and right-out access only, I think, from this site. And then also, I would like to see if you could put the future land use map up on the display that show what the intention is for commercial development in this area.
Yes, sir. I did want to just clarify that we did receive, as part of the research and planning and zoning staff, we reach out to respective departments, including Henry County DOT and GDOT, and the representative for GDOT did not make us aware of this. He even included a schematic that showed an access that would be appropriate off of Love, not a right-in, right-out. They did indicate that it would just be a right-in. So it would definitely be up to GDOT, the applicant, the developer, to confirm with both departments, GDOT and Henry County DOT, to ensure access. I can't place the future land use map on, oh, thank you. The subject property is shown in, highlighted in green.
Okay. So this suggests that, at least in the long term, that commercial would be expanded, I guess, to a certain depth into that residential area, as has been the trend apparently, for the last several years.
That's correct. The future land use map has designated commercial along Highway 138 or North Henry Boulevard to the west, including properties that are currently also zoned residential.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? I guess my question to the applicant, in reference to Love Drive, what's your intent with that area? Just say, let's make the assumption that it stops at the cul-de-sac. What would be your intent?
We would have to rearrange our site plan, because our intent the whole time was to be able to use Love Drive, not to block it off, but to be able to use it from Highway 138 as a second entrance. It would be counterproductive and to us to have it blocked off. And for the record, that is the first time I've ever even seen that plat. I don't even know if it's current. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's something that would be addressed, and this is for staff, that's something that would be addressed with DOT, and it would have to follow DOT guidelines at that point.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Mr. Nelson, that is correct. Staff also was not aware of that image until earlier today, and we just had no time to confirm with Henry County DOT and GDOT what's going on.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. If not, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for staff? All right, if not, call the case.
RZ 1911, Greg K. Hecht Walker, PC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R3 Single Family Residence to C3 Highway Commercial for property located at 101 Highway 138 East in land lots 33 and 64 of the 12th District. The property consists of 1.393 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a gas station and convenience store with associated commercial tenant spaces. This is District 4, and the report was presented by Mrs. Yuritsa Nieves, Planner 2.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept staff recommendation to approve the applicant's request with the following conditions. Condition 1, the applicant shall fully comply with all the requirements of the Highway Corridor Overlay District. And the condition 2, the applicant shall meet all minimum setbacks requirements for a C3 zoning district.
We have a motion. I'm sorry. Yes, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Risher. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, call the next case, please.
RZ 1913, James H. Nutt III of Marietta, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C3 Highway Commercial for property located on the north side of Hampton Locust Grove Road to the north of Brenly Way in land lots 210 and 209 of the 2nd District. The property consists of 41.268 plus or minus acres, and the request is for accessory trailer storage and parking for adjacent property. This is District 2, and the report is presented by Mrs. Yuritsa Nieves, Planner 2.
Good evening again, Chair and board members. The request before you is a request to rezone the property located on the north side of Hampton Locust Grove Road to the north of Brindley Way from RA Residential Agricultural to C3 Highway Commercial, which is highlighted in green in your exhibit books, for the purpose of accessory trailer storage and parking provision for the adjacent property to the north, which is this one. The area surrounding the subject property contains a variety of zoning districts. There are C2 zoned properties to the east and southeast of the subject property, while adjacent properties to the north are zoned M1, light manufacturing. There is also commercial and industrial development along the east side of Highway 155. The subject property has a commercial future land use designation. Commercial development is expected to be concentrated along Highway 155, expanding as far west as the subject property. With that being said, staff recommends approval of the applicant's request with 6 conditions, which I'll place on the overhead screen for your viewing. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, does the board have questions for staff?
Not at the moment.
Mr. Moore?
Yes. Could you put that map up that showed the black and white line diagram of the parking and the accesses? The last one you showed before this document, please. It's a little faint. Will there be entrances onto Hampton Locust Grove Road from that? It's hard to make out from this picture. Or will these trucks access this parking lot back and forth from the existing property to the north of it?
So I'll just adjust the map so you can see. The access is proposed only through the property to the north. There we go. So here, there is no access proposed or allowed from Hampton Locust Grove Road.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. If there is no additional question, will the applicant come forward, please? Will the applicant come forward? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Kent Mason, 3475 Piedmont Road, Atlanta, Georgia. Good evening, Chairman and council members.
Good evening. You have anything additional you would like to add to staff recommendation?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to point out. Staff has recommended a number of additional items for approval. One is the 40-foot buffer here along Hampton Locust Grove. We agree to that condition, obviously. Here on the west side of the property, there will be a 40-foot buffer. We're also agreeing to build a berm. That berm would be in the 8-foot to 12-foot high range. Beyond the buffer separating the property and the activities within this proposed trailer lot would be a pond. So the distance between the beginning of the buffer and the beginning of activity of the movement of trailers would be,
it's almost like a little under 300 feet, like 250 feet or so.
And the access, let's see, do we have an aerial? Give us a moment, please. Thank you. So this is the larger development. The 2 buildings to the north are Home Depot. These are e-commerce fulfillment centers. The buildings have expansion pads, as you can see, and they already have a good bit of trailer parking here to the north. This would be additional trailer parking to serve both buildings on their e-commerce campus. The alternative, if this was not approved, they would need to find additional land in the area, and then the trucks, instead of just going back and forth within the campus, there would be more activity created on 155 as those trucks went up to Greenwood Park or other industrially zoned land in the area. So the intent here is to minimize the amount of traffic leaving the campus and back and forth from the what would be a remote trailer parking location. So with that, we're certainly open to all of the specific conditions recommended by staff and here for any questions that you might have.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant? Mr. Richard?
What would be the effect, and I see the buffer and the pond and everything that you've put up in the drawing, but what would be the effect on your operation if if the row of trailer parking that's on the west side of the property, and then that on the south side that faces on Hampton Locust Grove Road, which of course faces into a residential area also. What if those rows of truck trailer parking were just removed from the plan? In other words, just take out those spaces.
The 40-foot buffer that's recommended by staff, normally this would be a 10-foot buffer to the south. That 40-foot buffer serves to mitigate any visibility and diminish any noise that would be associated with the trailers. So we've agreed to that condition. Losing that additional entire row along the south side there would more than likely render the project inadequate for the needs of the customer to the north. Here on the west side, again, we've got the 40-foot buffer, 10 to 12-foot high berm that would deflect noise and light, and then with the pond, you're almost 300 feet between where those trailers are and where residential property begins.
What type of projection was made to determine the number of trailer spaces in this area? Is that based on some kind of future growth for Home Depot economic activity, or?
So is the question is how many would that remove?
Well, yeah, what is the basis, for this many, spaces on this property?
So it's based on what they will need as they continue the growth at the campus. There are expansion pads here. So that is roughly a 400,000 square foot pad where they can expand the building to hold additional inventory for their e-commerce business. And then on the front here is an expansion pad of roughly 225,000 square feet. And as their business grows, as they have more inventory within the building, they're also going to need more trailer parking. And so much of the trailer parking today is driven by the new Federal Highway Administration regulations on truckers. So with E-Log, y'all may have heard of E-Log, there's computerized tracking of all truck drivers' movements, and it's much more rigid and draconian than past rules. So when a trucker arrives at this location, if a door is not prepared to receive that truck that might be coming from Florida or North Carolina or Tennessee, they then park those trailers to await the time at which that trailer can be placed at a door and unloaded by the staff that's in there. Likewise, FedEx, UPS will come down and they will stage trailers. So when, at the end of the day, when the orders have been picked, e-commerce orders, if you ordered a hammer or hardware from Home Depot, at the end of the day, those trailers from FedEx and UPS are brought to the doors, and then they're loaded up with all those packages that are going out to individual consumers. So the need for trailer parking for the growth of their business is real.
If I could just, my name is Danny Mitchell, 85A Mill Street, Roswell, Georgia. We're civil engineering on the project. And if I could point out to your concern with the number of spaces, condition 4 requires the set aside of additional future right-of-way for splost improvements down the road. And from this site plan, there will be a loss of about 100 trailers already to accommodate that additional 2 acres of land that would be set aside for the future splost road project.
Thank you, that's a great point. So this area in here, there's a strip that will be dedicated to future right-of-way, so everything actually moves slightly to the north to accommodate that future right-of-way.
Any additional questions?
I have a question for staff.
Look, okay, Mr. Carmichael.
Under your condition number 2, you indicate that if the subject property is to be used for overnight vehicle parking and/or storage, no access shall be taken off of Hampton's Locust Grove Road other than emergency access if needed, meeting county approval. The way this is stated, do you contemplate that there may be other instances where access would be allowed off that road?
Yes, so the way the condition is worded is that in the event that this doesn't develop as the trailer parking, in the event that the property owner, for whatever reason, doesn't develop it for this use, if they want to put an extension to the shopping center where the Public is, for example, on the corner, then they would be allowed to take access off Hampton Locust Grove Road. But Hampton Locust Grove Road is not an approved truck route. Our Henry County DOT has been very clear, explicitly clear, that no trucks shall take access to or from Hampton Locust Grove Road. But we didn't want to limit that in the event. The applicants do seem very clear that this is what they want to do, but in the event that they don't, if the property is repurposed for some other use that's allowed in C3 zoning, then they would be able to take access off Hampton Locust Grove Road, if county DOT approves it.
I would add that that is not our intent at all. Home Depot is the occupant of the campus, and Prologis, the firm for whom I work, only does industrial. So if it were to go a different direction, that would be a different buyer coming in at some point in the future if we were not to move forward.
Mr.
What would be the operating hours for that park?
So at present, I do not know the answer to that question. Home Depot, is it 24/7? So the folks that live nearby know, so better than I do. So it'd be 24/7.
Any additional questions?
With that, would it been open 24 hours a day like that? What other factors are you going to put in place to limit the noise and the lighting pollution?
Sure. So the lighting today for site lighting for industrial buildings as well as trailer parks has been designed for minimal light pollution. Danny, you're probably a better expert on the.
I mean, they would meet county ordinances, and I think the trailer parking wouldn't need, say, as much lighting as the, around the building itself, but it would all be the downcast lighting, and they would do the lighting plan to show that there's no light pollution beyond the property line.
Okay, with the trucks being parked there overnight, would they, while they are waiting to arrive at the dock, would they be running the trucks continuously, or they be shut down, or what?
So the way that good question, the way that these trailer parks work, essentially a trailer is slotted into one of the trailer parking stalls, and then that they call them yard dogs, the small truck that doesn't have much of a cab. So that yard dog would drop it off. It would probably grab another one nearby it would drop off an empty, pick up a full, take it back, and then it just runs back and forth continuously, dropping off and picking up, but there wouldn't be a large number of those. So there wouldn't be a running diesel engine for each trailer stall. Typically, these yard dogs, there's 2 or 3 that operate continuously on industrial properties. So that's what I would expect.
Over the road truckers might be parking overnight, they're running the engines all night.
Yeah, Home Depot does not allow, they don't operate a truck stop. They don't allow folks to stay there overnight with their trucks running. You're allowed onto the campus through the secured entrance here. You drop off and then they expect you to leave.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned additional traffic if this facility is not approved. Can you go back to that? Explain what's actually taking place? Additional truck traffic?
When you mentioned that if it wasn't approved, you'd have to find a house.
Oh, yes, if not approved, they're still going to have the need for trailer parking spaces. So the alternative would be for them to go to Greenwood Park or Midland or somewhere elsewhere in the area where there is industrial zone land and build trailer parking capacity there. That would create inefficiencies for them to have to go a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. It would also create more traffic if the trailers have to be dropped at a remote lot and shuttled back and forth, as opposed to coming in through this single point of ingress, egress up onto this lot and back and forth between the buildings.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. If not, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. Okay. We'd also like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. As you come forward, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Diane Johnson. I'm at 101 Brindley Way, right across the street from the proposed parking lot. And I had a lot of comments, but I understand now a little bit better about what's being proposed. And I guess my biggest concern is noise. My bedroom faces Hampton Locust Grove Road. Every night I hear the backup beeps of the trucks, the opening and closing of the truck doors, and the opening and closing of the loading dock doors to the Home Depot distribution center. I cannot even imagine what the noise will be, just regular truck traffic, not even backup beeps yet, coming into that parking lot. I do see where they're proposing to put some type of sound barrier in, but Home Depot put in a sound barrier that doesn't do anything. In fact, they're not even maintaining it. Their landscaping is not very good at all. Half the trees that they put in as sound barriers are dead, and they have not replaced them. So I don't know what y'all are going to do here. I have a feeling you're going to approve it. I'm not happy about that. But whatever you do, please take care of my household and my neighbor's households in the subdivision across the way, in making sure that they hold up to whatever sound suppression that they put in. Because right now, I'm young and healthy, but that's not going to be true down the road. And I don't want to stay up till all hours unless it's my choice based on noise. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Yes, please state your name and address.
Hi, Debbie Melton, and I live at 399 Trestle Road. And I moved to that area 14 years ago, had a custom home built, and the purpose of it was for residential. And it is so heartbreaking to me. I am a local realtor as well. I have sold many homes in that area. The joy of our area has been lost. It took me 30 minutes yesterday morning at about 9:30 in the morning to get to I-75. That's unbelievable. And not only that, the neighborhood that backs up to where this proposed site is, I've sold several homes in that community, beautiful community. They're already hearing loud noises and everything going on from the Home Depot site. So we've got the traffic issue. We also have the issue of property values and what it's doing, because it is nothing I mean, it is unbelievable what the feedback I'm hearing when you talk about Highway 155. It's heartbreaking. We've put our dollars there. We want a community. That is residential property. Build a nice home, build some nice homes there. But this is sad that this is happening, and it doesn't have to happen. It can go to Greenwood as far as we're concerned. Keep that up there. It just shouldn't be happening. But so I beg you to at least listen to us. You wouldn't want this in your backyard. You wouldn't be wanting to be kept up at night. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Bernie Morrison. I live at 397 Gloucester Drive in the Wycliffe subdivision. And before I begin, I'd like to ask everyone that's in opposition to this if they would stand so that you can see how many residents we have here that are following all of this and are highly interested in it. I think I can speak on behalf of everyone. We thank you for being here, for listening to us, and for your service to the county. I'm sure there's many things you'd rather be doing on a night like tonight, but we appreciate that you take your time out to do this. We are concerned about the impact on property values and quality of life in our subdivision. When the gentleman spoke earlier, he said these yard dogs run continuously, 24/7. That is no lie. They do. A gentleman that lives in this area measured at 1,250 feet from the existing facility, just spent $8,000 upgrading his windows and doors because of the sound. Other residents, it wakes them up at night, it wakes their children up at night, and you can't enjoy your backyards, your patio, your pool, your deck, your porches, or any of that in the evening because of all the noise. The overriding impact of all of this is noise. The recommendation from Planning and Zoning states, quote, the impacts on the adjacent residential property owners should be minimal. Well, that was probably in the zoning when the existing facility was made, and it hasn't been minimal. It's been horrific. We hear loud booms constantly through the night, the engine noise, and the access that you've proposed to come around this side of the building into here means that all of that traffic will be coming right behind the houses to come into that parking area. We would like to see that move to another area. Because the time's getting so short, I'm going to rush through some of this. We're concerned about the stormwater capacity. We already have instances of flooding along Wycliffe Drive when we have heavy rains. During the construction phase of the previous facility, there was blasting at all hours and engine noise and blowing dust and dirt into the subdivision from the wind came out of the east, damaged pools, hot tub filters, and so forth. We would like to see limits on that during construction. We are pleased that there's no access from Hampton Locust Grove Road, but parking 1,077 trailers and moving them around with these yard dogs moving constantly is just going to ruin us in that subdivision. And by the way, some adjacent subdivisions, people in the subdivision behind ours to the west of there hear this noise at times. We would like to ask you to at least modify the conditions that have been presented in this report. I've given everyone a handout. Please change number 5 to read that there'll be a 40-foot wide buffer along Hampton Locust Grove Road with a 10-foot high landscape bumper consisting of a berm and a wall totaling 10 feet. And we would like for the plantings to be very dense. And we don't want to see a chain link fence. We don't want an eyesore there. The first lady that spoke lives across the street. She has a 2-story house. She doesn't want to look across there from her upper stories and see all these trailers all the time. Imagine if you're trying to sell a property and someone is coming in from I-75, they come up Bill Gardner Parkway, they cross 155, they come up the entrance to our subdivision. Just before they do, they look over and see 1,000 trailers over there. They're going to think, I'm in the middle of the industrial area, and they're going to drive on by. They're not going to even come in to look at our property that's for sale. We're concerned about light pollution. We're concerned about preserving the line of sight from the exit out of Whitfield Drive onto Hampton Locust Grove Road, where there's already been one fatality there. We want to make sure that the retention pond is designed so that it drains soon enough not to breed mosquitoes. At one time, there was an agreement that the trucks, that these yard dogs would use strobes instead of an audio alarm when they're backing up. That didn't last very long, and it's back again. We hear that constant beeping. Then as they're connecting up to the trailers, there's a loud revving of the engine and then a boom as that connects with the fifth wheel. We also hear a boom when they bump the trailers into docks when they're moving them up there. If you could add a restriction to require a visual alarm when backing rather than an audio alarm, that would be wonderful. We also ask that during the construction phase only, that operations causing noise, such as the engine noise, the beeping, horns, blasting, and so forth, cease between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And also that there be no burning on the property, and that every effort be made to prohibit the blowing of dirt and dust into our subdivision when the wind is out of the east. I'd like to repeat that the overriding concern of all of this is the noise. The gentleman that speaks after me will address that. He had a handout, but we would like for you to reduce the impact by modifying these conditions that have been presented in this as given to you in the handout. Thank you very much.
What was your name again?
Bernie Morrison.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, we only have about 8 seconds for anyone wishing to speak in opposition at this point.
Can I give you all a handout?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and allow 5 minutes for any opposition, and we're going to have to close it out in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Olin Heath. I'm at 108 Wycliffe Drive, directly behind where the new subdivision is going, the parking lot's going to be. And main thing I want to talk about is the noise buffer. We need to, let's see, we can show this. When you talk about noise, you've got, this is, I think, your second page in your handout. Notice you've got several different types of buffers. They were showing a tree area, which is just this, with a mound. I think you said 8 to 10 feet, something like that. Well, if you look at the lines here, the green line, that is truck noise with a 100-foot wide tree shrub buffer and a 12-foot high landform. It drops off pretty quick. You notice I put house up here. That's roughly how far the property line is where your house would be, somewhere between 50 and 100 feet. So it's reasonable with that. But the type of trees you put there is a key item. You've got to have things like Leland cypress, the green giant, that are very dense trees, in addition to the buffer landform. This study is based on, there's a bunch of, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if the thing can blow it up or not. But this data is taken from numerous studies the universities, the Noise Control Engineering Journal, that type of thing. This gives you a relative idea of the different types of noise buffers. The full wall you see here, like on the highways, is your best possible. And then what we're talking about here is a buffer with a 12-foot mound and dense trees on that are your next best. And then the weakest, of course, is nothing. But then you got just the straight trees. And the overall conclusion is having noise that you can reduce, and depending on how the trucks are backing noise, the buzzer, that type thing, going to a strobe light, make a big difference. You look lower than the decibels you're making right there. But this gives you some information. And I think the key thing from this is that it doesn't appear there's been an actually noise study done on this, from what I've seen. It needs to be a good noise study done to determine exactly what needs to be done. And we need to be able to enjoy where we're living.
Can you leave me 60 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. And we need to enjoy ourselves outside, inside, and a noisy area, this type of racket keeping you up at night will not work. Okay?
Okay.
Good evening. My name's Bill Greek. I live at 104 Wycliffe. I'm the second house on the right when you come into Subdivision. I'm the guy you mentioned that spent $8,000 on windows. My wife and I are 70 years old. This is our retirement home. It's a beautiful subdivision. It's a wonderful part of the county. We sold real estate in 14 counties, so we know where we wanted to live, and now we're faced with this as a horrific addition to our area. I've got a pool in the backyard. We can't go out there at 9 o'clock at night for the booming and the beep, beep, beeping. We call Barbara at zone code enforcement. Are you gonna cut me off right at the zero? I just want to say this real quick. We call Barbara constantly in the 4 years we've lived there. She calls them, they get quiet. 2 weeks later, they're back. It's just a nonstop. We're never going to win this battle. And this, if this is done, I don't want it approved. Obviously, I don't want it approved. I don't care about buffers. I don't want to see that. Let's use this land for something else, a commercial development or something else.
Okay. Well, at this time, does the board have additional questions for the applicant?
I do. Applicant and staff, please. Noise is a problem. So you've agreed to the existing conditions as recommended by staff. Are you willing to add any additional landscaping buffers and footage so that we can maybe lessen the sound?
I think
Are those
what we need
options?
to do is, clearly noise is an issue. It's an existing issue, and more noise is not a good thing for you folks. So if we can put in some of the suggested, so if we can, what I suggest we do is come back with a noise mitigation plan that will help shield the neighbors from the additional noise. Home Depot is a very customer-focused retail company. The last thing they want to do is poke the neighbors in the eye. And so let us table this for the time being and then come back to you with a plan that incorporates more noise mitigation that will respect the neighbors in the area.
Yeah. If you would allow me to chime in, the request before you tonight is to ask this board to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. There will be a hearing before the Board of Commissioners. There is no real reason to table this item, but staff is here to work with the applicant to schedule the Board of Commissioners hearing, to give them as much time as they may need to put together this noise mitigation plan. But if it's the pleasure of the board to have a noise mitigation plan, I would recommend that you include that in your recommendation as a condition.
All right. Let me ask, do we have additional questions for the applicant? Mr. Richards.
I have something that I'd like to see be considered as part of the noise study, and that's what I brought up before, was on the western side to eliminate all of those parking spaces. That would create further distance, from the residential area. And I think you mentioned that there is some allocation in your site plan for the future widening on Hampton Locust Grove Road. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
2.5 acres are reserved for future right-of-way.
All right. I would suggest, as a condition, to eliminate that entire row of parking that is next to the Wycliffe subdivision, and include that as part of your landscape buffer and noise mitigation project.
I would, Mr. Chairman, I would also suggest that the applicants meet with the concerned residents in developing whatever new plan you plan to submit.
Duly noted, and we will come up with our revised plan and then be collaborative in how we approach it.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns, and understandably so. So if we approve this with the condition to come up with a noise mitigation plan, and also that you agree to meet with the residents so that they can have a voice in determining that plan, and then adding in Mr. Rischer's suggestion of eliminating a row of parking spaces. Does that sound like a reasonable action tonight? And then my next question would be, how much time between tonight and that this case would come before hearing of the Board of Commissioners for a final decision?
So what I would suggest, Ms. King, is if we could have something concrete, something definite, a dimensional standard within which parking may not be developed. So is there a distance from the westernmost property line where there can be no parking? We need something concrete.
Mr. Rischer?
Mr. Chairman, I guess in view of that, I think it'd be unfair to the applicant and unfair to the residents for us to vote on this matter before they come up with a plan.
I think the issue is we have to do something with it.
Right.
I think to deny it is going to create a bigger problem farther down the road. If we just flat out deny this, that's going to create a bigger problem later, I'm guessing.
If I may address the board, You are not making a decision tonight. This is just a recommendation. So regardless of whether approval, deny, or whatever is made, it will eventually go to the Board of Commissioners. However, I don't have a date for you. I don't have our calendars, and the applicants can request more time if needed.
Staff, I would like to be in a position to make an informed decision.
Hold on one second. Mr. Richard has a question.
Well, I don't think that there's any exact schedule that this absolutely has to go to the commissioners until some of these things are taken care of. So I mean, so there could be a vote tonight. But I guess my question: what is the typical length of a trailer?
Trailers are 53 feet.
All right, 53 feet. So all right, by eliminating that road, that'll add 53 more feet, towards the noise barrier or landscape barrier. So, so here again, I'd like to see that as part of the other added conditions that were just mentioned.
Just to bring everyone up to par, I do believe that we have to either make a decision whether we're going to add conditions to our decision tonight or deny this decision. So one of the two has to take place.
Yes, sir.
Okay, based on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. If not, you may be seated. Sir, any additional questions for staff?
Yes, I have one question. What does a recently adopted future land use plan show for this area?
The future land use map designates the subject property for commercial.
Okay, well, I think that's the basis upon which we have to, that we have to stipulate all of these conditions, because the fact is that the land use plan shows a non-residential type of development for this tract.
Yeah. Yes, sir, that's correct.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. No questions. Call the case, please.
Yes, sir. RZ 1913, James H. Nutt III of Marietta, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C3 Highway Commercial for property located on the north side of Hampton Locust Grove Road to the north of Brenly Way in land lots 210 and 209 of the 2nd District. The property consists of 41.268 plus or minus acres, and the request is for accessory trailer storage and parking for adjacent property. This is District 2, and the report was presented by Mrs. Yuritsa Nieves, Planner 2.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve this request based on staff recommendation. This is RZ 1913 with added conditions. So we accept the existing conditions with the added conditions that the applicant must provide a noise mitigation plan, meet with residents in order to construct that noise mitigation plan, and taking into account Mr. Rischer's suggestion, eliminating, and correct me if I'm wrong, 53 feet of parking space from the lot, correct?
Okay. All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. All right, call the next case, please. Thank you, sir.
RZ 1914, General Holdings Unlimited, LLC of Monroe, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to R3 Single Family Residence for property located at 1496 Miller's Mill Road in land lots 27 and 28 of the 11th District. The property consists of 89.01 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a single-family residential subdivision. This is District 4, and the report is presented by Ms. Jewel Richardson, Planner 1.
Good evening, Chair and board members. The rezoning request is for the property located at 1496 Millers Mill Road. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from RA to R3 for a development of 144 lots. The proposed development is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. The future land use designation of low density residential, which allows up to 2 dwelling units per acre net. And the proposed development has a net density of 2 dwelling units per acre. Staff recommends approval of the request with 6 conditions seen on the overhead. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does the board have questions for staff? Mr. Richard?
In the exhibit, we have the so-called yield plan, which was what if the property was zoned R3, it would yield 144 lots, I believe, and you might want to explain to us what the yield plan is as far as to doing a conservation subdivision. But were there any other yield plans based on different types of zonings, such as R2S, that is R2 zoning, which is 22,000 square feet and 115 feet wide with sanitary sewer? I was just wondering if staff or the applicant has used any other types of zoning to come up with the lot yield and as part of this property development.
No, sir. The only yield plan that was presented to staff was the one that's up above on the overhead.
Okay, well, maybe the applicant can tell us.
Yes.
Okay.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. If not, will the applicant come forward?
Good evening again, Chairman, members of the board. Steve Moore, Moore-Bass Consulting, 1350 Keys Ferry Court, McDonough, Georgia. Now representing General Holdings Unlimited on the rezoning request for this piece of property. So, as Jewel mentioned, this is the yield plan. This is the zone based on the zoning in which we were applying. The basis behind the zoning was somewhat based on proximity to other zonings in the area, maybe not immediately adjacent to us, but there is another map that's in the staff report. You may have it out already. That does show some most recent zonings that are R2, which are the or R3 rather, which are the yellow zone projects that are the Meadows at Miller's Mill and Barrington Subdivision, and then most recently, as you may remember, was a zoning about a mile west of this site that was zoned to residential suburban, which actually allows even smaller lots than the R3 or even the conservation subdivision. But that was the basis behind, at least our thoughts behind an R3 layout. The subdivisions that are immediately adjacent to us and across the street, while the lots definitely are big, there's no debating that. Those subdivisions were built before the Cotton Indian Creek Interceptor that was built in 2006 that exposed this property to sewer, as well as these other R3 properties, as well as the one that was zoned residential suburban. When you have sewer within 2,000 feet of you, you are obligated and required to connect to it. And so that's at least maybe an explanation, at least of the development patterns that have occurred and why there are some lots that are big and some that are recently approved that are smaller. And it has to do with the proximity and requirement to access that sewer. Again, though, that was the yield plan that we presented, and it meets the intent and requirements of the zoning ordinance for R3. By definition of that zoning district, there's no open space requirements, there's no buffer requirements. All there is a lot size requirement, and then the future land use map obviously has a net density requirement of 2 units per acre, which we take into consideration when we put this plan together, and it does meet that, which on the other side of the equation equals 144 lots, which again is what we used as our basis for the conservation plan, which is really what we would prefer to build. I think it is probably, I'm sure it is less street and less impact than the yield plan. However, as I mentioned in my first presentation, it's not a compact, cram everything into one spot and throw the open space in the back that you'll never use, never access, never touch. There's a lot of thought that went into at least the concept of, even though they're small lots, providing big spaces that are adjacent to those lots so it feels like a big lot. That's all buildable, usable property that will be behind everyone's lot. Nobody backs up, nobody looks at somebody's swing set or a barbecue grill. It'll be, there'll be trees planted, there'll be buffer, there'll be natural vegetation plus mitigated with additional plantings. As I mentioned before, we do have a 100-foot buffer along Miller's Mill Road and a minimum 50-foot around the other perimeter edges, and then a much larger buffer in the very back of the property. Sorry, I've lost my place in my notes here. The ordinance requires the conservation subdivision, which obviously we already talked about, does require 40%. This plan proposes 47% open space. We are consistent with the future land use map, as Jewel mentioned. We believe we're consistent with recent zonings in this general area. We think the layout meets the county's objectives. It meets the future land use map requirements. It meets the county's conservation subdivision ordinance requirements. We feel like the fact that sewer is available to this property, that something is going to develop here, a subdivision of some sort is going to develop here. We believe we have a plan that's well thought out that may not be perfectly compatible with the existing adjacent subdivisions, but again, there's a reason for that, and that's just availability to sewer. And had sewer been available back then, those lots would have been probably something along these lines. As far as price point goes, these aren't going to be starter homes. They're not going to be $120,000 townhomes. These are going to be $300,000 houses plus. There may be some in the high 200s, but 300 will probably be the median, and they'll probably go up from there. And by the time this develops, which obviously it takes time to develop, those prices may even go up higher than that. The fact that development costs are what they are right now and land costs are what they are right now, you can't build, there may be somebody that can build a $120,000 house, but it's pretty tough. I mean, these houses will be nice. These houses will be on the upper end of what we were talking about earlier as far as price point goes. Staff, I understand, has recommended approval. We are in perfect agreement with all of the conditions, and at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you've got.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
I do. Steve, do you have any idea about what percentage will have, will be able to have side entry garages?
There's obviously all the corner lots. So I would say anywhere where you have a lot like this one, This one probably could accommodate one, this, these. And I will say too, that one probably and that one, with the fact that we do have open space kind of incorporated, it does allow us the opportunity to make those lots adjacent to the open space bigger, to maybe accommodate that. I mean, you would only need to add maybe 15 feet. This builder actually has products that are side entry that he says he can fit on a much smaller lot even. So, which is new to me, but I mean, so that may be an option. We have a lot of room, I guess, to spread some things out within the confines of that layout to accommodate additional side entry.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Will this be an HOA property?
It will, mandatory.
So the HOA will manage the green spaces in between the lots?
It will. Yes, sir.
Mr. Carmack.
Would you be willing to make that one of the conditions of approval of having the HOA?
Having an HOA? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Right. And secondly, would you be willing to consider increasing the minimum lot sizes to 18,000 square feet?
Well, if we do that, then we go back to this plan. I mean, those are 18,000 square foot lots.
Which plan?
The plan, the yield plan that's up on the screen, those are 18,000 square foot lots. That's an R3 layout, which was the basis behind the 144 units that the property would support. So as the conservation subdivision was approved earlier, that again is a development option. And so if this board recommends approval and if the Board of Commissioners approves the rezoning to R3, essentially the developer would have the option of either developing something similar to that or something similar to this, so long as it's capped out at 144 lots. So that was the basis behind our request, wasn't 18,000 square foot lot zoning, but to allow it to compress down so we can offer that open space and that buffering behind in the backs of all those rear-facing lots.
Based on this plan, Mr. Moore, what's the minimum square footage of each house?
Well, by definition, the minimum is 10,890, which is a quarter of an acre. These lots are bigger than that. I can't tell you exactly what the average lot size is, but we're above the minimum, I would guess, by 10% on average at least. So these may be 11 or 12,000 square foot on average, these lots.
And the minimum square footage of the structure?
The structure in the recommendation by staff was 2,400 square feet, which we're okay with.
Okay. Mr. Richard?
I think in the staff report that we have, it says that the minimum heated square footage of the homes are recommended to be 2,400 square feet. How would the applicants feel about changing that to, say, 2,800 square feet of heated area?
Unfortunately, the applicant, my client, is not here, but
sorry to interrupt. Once the reports were sent out to the board, there was discussion in the new conditions that I posted. The minimum, we conditioned them to a minimum 2,200. Yes.
I didn't see that. So it went down from 24 to 22?
Yes.
Okay. What was that based on?
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Just for clarification, may I ask why it went from 2,400 down to 2,200?
It was a conversation had with the owner of the property, and he spoke with our director, and it goes along with the other properties that are the rezoning that happened.
The Meadows in Barrington, probably?
Yes. So we gave a balance. We looked at all of the other we compared it to the rest of the surrounding areas of the area, and we saw that we had 1,200, 2,500, 2,000, 1,700, a quarter, 1/3 of them were gonna be 1,700, 1/3 was gonna be 1,800. That is in Barrington. Barrington subdivision has, as platted, 1/3 is 1,700, 1/3 is 1,800, and 1/3 is 2,000. The Cotton Fields and Cotton Fields 2 is home size is on the plat is minimum 2,000. We have for Meadows of Miller's Mill on the plat is 2,500 minimum. So we gave, when they proposed that to us as staff, we thought that that was comparable to what was the surrounding areas.
Thank you. Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay.
Steve, I guess I went out and looked at the area, and I'm really concerned about what you're proposing versus the character of the homes in the area. And now it seems like we're making a further reduction in the size of the homes. I don't know. I guess I don't know what. I don't know if I have a question or just have a concern here in terms of whether or not we're actually maintaining the character of this area.
Well, if I could, the conservation subdivision is, I guess you could call it a trend in development. One of the benefits of it is that it mandates and requires buffering of adjacent properties, to adjacent properties. That ordinance does not, that provision in the ordinance doesn't exist from a residential to residential zoning. It's just not, it's not in the black and white of the ordinance, it's not required. This mandates, enforces, and implements buffers in an effort to protect those adjacent properties. And it provides flexibility to the applicant or the developer to even increase those buffers. And I will tell you that there is room in this plan to increase those buffers beyond the 50-foot on the next to the adjacent subdivisions. The 100-foot buffer adjacent to Miller's Mill, otherwise, if it was a standard zoned property, even if it was RA, is not a requirement. So one of the things that it does is, although it does shrink lot size down, I think, in my opinion, and as a planner and having done this for a long time, that it creates that opportunity to really create an enclave of development that is otherwise hidden and screened from those larger lot subdivisions that might be adjacent to it. And so, I mean, if you took the total area and you added it in, if you took the area of the open space and you added it as part of the lot areas and you divided it by 144, the lot sizes on average are much larger. But again, it's just a matter of what you own versus what you have access to that somebody else owns and maintains. So that's at least, I mean, what I see the value in. And the truth is that people that are moving to Henry County and people that are graduating from college and graduating from whatever schools they're going to, the trend is not to buy acre lots anymore. It's just not, at least not what we're seeing. The trend is smaller lots. The millennial age people, you know, they don't even own a lawnmower. They don't want a lawnmower. So there is a demand for smaller lots. You're even seeing some ordinances. I've even heard Henry County talk about a tiny home ordinance for people that don't want the monster house and the McMansions and the 2 acres to go cut every Saturday. They would rather spend their time doing something else with their kids or walking the trail and not having to deal with that. To each their own. I live on a 42-foot wide lot. I love it right now, not having to cut grass. But there is a demand for that, and that's why I think you're seeing that trend of these conservation-type subdivisions.
I think one of the concerns here, Ms. Morton, is that it's not necessarily the lot size itself, it's the size of the structure.
Yes, sir.
And that one of the questions was presented earlier was one of the concerns was the size of the structure. And my question, to go back to what Mr. Carmichael stated earlier, would you have a problem with going to a 28 square foot structure?
And again, I didn't realize that conversation had taken place and that modification was made based on some math that was done on these other approvals. I couldn't commit to that on behalf of my client, but I guess based on what we've learned tonight, if you wanted to make a recommendation for some modification of that, we could, consider that and then address it prior to the Board of Commissioners hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any additional question for the applicant? Mr. Richard?
As I look at the overall layout that's in the area, there's that the subject property abuts 14 lots within the Cotton Fields subdivision, and so perhaps in that area, the larger lots on this property could abut those, and it would be
And I think that's something we could
more
absolutely.
compatible, from that standpoint.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation. I think that's something we could incorporate into this design.
Any additional questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. Okay. No one's coming forward. We'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. And you do share that 10 minutes, so please be aware of that.
Mark Logan, 305 North Mill Parkway. Mr. Moore made a statement that one backyard wouldn't abut up to another backyard in this subdivision. If I live here, I'm looking in his backyard. If I'm looking here, I'm in his backyard. If I'm here, I'm in his backyard. So that statement is not true. He also stated that these houses would run in the $300,000 range. And let me ask you a question. What house in Stockbridge, Georgia, that is 2,200 square feet can you sell for $300,000? Does anybody know of one? New, old, renovated? There's not one. It has not been discussed what the exterior of these homes will be. Are they going to be masonry, four-side brick, vinyl siding? What's going to be the exterior of these homes? The side entry garages. Out of the 144 lots that he stated, he drew in about 10 side entry. So that's 134 that's going to have front entry, which does not go with the area. None whatsoever. So my question to the board here is, what street can I go build a custom home on that this kind of stuff's not going to happen right across the street from me? And the sight distance on the entrance into Cotton Fields 2 is a bad entrance anyway. Probably shouldn't have been approved back when that subdivision was built. Now we're going to add more traffic on that little hill right there, which is a hazard. And the lady from the board stated that Cotton Fields 2 was approved with a 2,000 square foot home in it. I would like for her to give me the address of the 2,000 square foot home that's in that subdivision. There's not one. 3,000 is the minimum square footage in that subdivision. And in closing, I'd like you to say, tell me what road in Henry County, because you got 6 items on the docket tonight, 3 of them's been taken RA to something else. Where is RA going to be sacred at in this county? That I can go build a custom home and not have to worry about 10, 15 years from now this happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sandy Murphy. I live at 15 Plantation in Cotton Fields 1. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a home in Cotton Fields 2, or Cotton Plantation, which are going to surround this subdivision with a 2,000 square foot home. My house is 4,500 square feet. You're bringing our property values down big time. The traffic on Miller's Mill is just atrocious. My husband had a really bad accident at our entrance to our subdivision last year. Totaled 2 cars, our car and the other person's car, because he couldn't see the car coming over that hill. And you're going to put 144 homes in there. The traffic can't take it. Then you go to the schools. The schools are overcrowded now. You put 144 homes in that subdivision. Oh my gosh. Our kids are never going to learn anything in school. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Say, if you can zoom in on that picture, Robert Kolpak, 272 Cotton Indian Creek Road. That is what the area that we're talking about, that's the type of home we have. That's 4,870 square feet. The property here is what be different. It won't be vinyl siding, but it's going to look the same as far as the distance between the properties. I don't think those are comparable. I don't know the attraction for the small little dense properties other than you make a lot of money on it as a developer. And that's probably why he lives in Monroe and he's building in Henry County, because they probably won't allow this in another county. When you have that little bit of, 0.27 acres, the cars and parking, you're going to have this in that neighborhood. On top of the schooling system, 144 homes are going to create 2 kids a house, 208, on top of the pictures I showed you earlier. If you guys need to see them again, I can show you trailers at the schools. If you guys travel around, maybe Commissioner Thomas doesn't believe that the schools matter because the Board of Commissioner or Board of Education has the same plan she does. But somebody's got to say, we made mistakes in the past and we have to correct these mistakes, because if we don't, we're going to end up not having property values there. We're not going to have the roadways we want. And then what will everybody do at that point? Probably move away. And a lot of the people that live in our neighborhoods, it's a nice neighborhood, nice people. All we're asking is that 1 acre, why rezone it? There's no need to rezone these properties to 3 houses an acre. It's absurd. I don't care how much buffering you give me. I can see Joe across the street in his drawers when I live that close to him. My property where I live, there is no, you do not see anybody behind me. I live on a creek. I worked hard to get, that's a picture of my backyard. That might not be everybody, but it's a trend. The millennials, everything's a trend. But real life is what holds value. Good housing, brick homes, acreage. They usually stay hand in hand. I've not seen a condo. I have not seen small houses develop good, or the area stays good. Anybody else got anything to say? All right, come on. I'm going to cut off and go. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. I'm Bobby Wilson. I'm 324 North Mill Parkway. That's in the Cotton Fields 2. I had no intentions of coming up here and saying anything tonight, but here's reality is that we came into this area. Me and my wife have been here 25 years. I was raised in Henry County. I've been in Henry County for 55 years.
And now you're looking at areas here that, as Mr. Logan was saying just a few minutes ago, we're not going to be able to find anywhere in Henry County that we can go and build a house that is a quality house and be able to and live and know that something's not going to move next door to us. Y'all have already voted something on right down the road from us that, yes, you voted it in and it's coming. I understand growth. I am not against growth at all. I've seen it grow, and I encourage it to grow. I know that's how we survive in an economy, but you've got to watch what we do. The 3 subdivisions that are sitting there next to us, we've all talked about it. They've got at least 3,000 square foot in those houses. Those houses are sitting on an acre or more. For the gentleman to say that these new houses coming in are going to be $300,000 houses, there's people in our subdivision now that are having a hard time getting $300,000 for a 4,000 and 5,000 square foot house sitting on 2 acres of land. And so how are you going to be able to say that you're going to get $300,000 for a house sitting on a quarter of an acre that's going to be 2,500 or less square footage? And we got to protect at least half of this street. I'm for them coming in and growing. As soon as we moved in there, we knew that somebody was going to go into that area over there. But we just hoped it was going to be the same thing that was happening for the other 2 subdivisions that happened right next to us. As long as that kind of thing's happening, that's fine. Just like we were saying, nobody's saying anything about what's the outside of this is going to look like. I mean, if it's a 2,500, 3,000 square foot house and it's brick, that's fine. That's getting in there. I'm not against the growth coming in, but just the whole idea of putting 4 houses on a subdivision on the street and then turn around and you've got the parking the way that he's talking about the parking is. If we're putting 300 right down the road from it, why do we need another 150 down on this side of the road? If the market's going to do it, it will eventually show it. But at this point now, we had 4 in our neighborhoods for sale. 2 of them's already sold. The other 2's getting contracts on them. So that's showing that there is a market for our housing. Why mess it up with some of these others? And I just encourage y'all to do the right thing here. You wouldn't want these in your neighborhood. And we're just trying to make sure that we're protecting what we've come in here and invested in and have tried to live our lives through. The builder that was in here was a very reputable builder, and he built a lot of nice houses here. And now all of a sudden we're going to come in and try to do something like this. This is the first time I've been to one of these meetings, and it's definitely the first time I've tried to do something like this. But I just encourage you to do the right thing.
Okay. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant and staff? Applicant, will you please come forward?
Yes, sir.
The homes in this subdivision, will they all be custom built versus having spec homes?
I'm sure that there will be some specs, but the builder, the applicant is a builder. So he builds his own houses. I don't know, I really don't know his building model, if it's semi-custom, if he does custom work, I don't know, but I do know that the applicant is the developer and the builder.
And the exterior of these homes, I guess according to condition 4 recommended by staff, indicates that the exteriors would be a combination of 2 or more of the following on all sides: brick, stone, stucco, and common fiber board. Yes, sir. That's your intent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one question of staff. According to the report you gave us, the proposed minimum lot size you indicate here is 10,890 square feet.
Yes. And that is the intent, because throughout the report, we discussed that they are proposing to have
Conservation.
Yes, a conservation subdivision. I'm sorry. Slipped my mind.
Okay. But you can have a conservation subdivision with larger lot sizes also, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Mr. Richard?
And you may have mentioned this before, Steve, but in terms of the overall, site, roughly how many acres will be undeveloped? That is, will be buffers and no lots?
On our plan, it's the 35.6 acres that would remain undeveloped. I'm sorry, that's the required. Total proposed is 41.7 acres.
41 acres will be undeveloped.
Correct.
And that includes the separation or the buffers between this property and the adjacent subdivision. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, what about the square footage of these homes for in terms of the heated area? Would that be 2,800 square feet?
Honestly, I could only assume that obviously whatever the number that was discussed is obviously a minimum. I'm confident that they'll be building bigger than that, but like I said, if you have a recommendation for something that's greater than the 2,200 square feet, we can take that and I can run it past my client when he's back.
All right. Well, I would hope that you would take that recommendation.
Okay.
And I will say too, as far as some of the comments about, if I could, about house price, these lots and any lot that's a new development lot, they're going to cost the builder between $60,000 and $80,000 right now. Development costs have doubled in the last 10 years. Land cost, again, is on the rise. It absolutely, I do cost estimates all the time for subdivisions. It costs that much money to build a subdivision lot. And the rule of thumb is that the lot price is about 20% of the total value of the house. So that's kind of the math. So a $300,000 house, 20%, $60,000. And if these are $80,000, it'll push the price up even higher than that.
And did you consider any other zoning, say for example like R2S, to see what the lot yield would be, for that zoning?
No, sir. Like I said, R3 was the direction I was given, and that's kind of the path that we went, again, based on proximity to adjacent or down the street on both sides, something consistent with those, not exactly next door, but in very close proximity.
Well, of course, the R2S would yield fewer lots, of course.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore, for my own understanding, for my own knowledge, I want to ask. See on the on your schematic there, where the little green space is that cuts in between those four pieces of property, kind of in the middle? You see?
Right here?
Yes, sir. Okay. If you put your finger up top, right there, I can't, okay. The lot that is just north of your finger, that one, and the one just to the left of it, those two. Excuse me, the other side. The other left. Yeah, there you go. Those two lots, they look comparable in size and location and amount of vegetation and all that, right?
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Just a minute ago, you said it costs about how much to develop a land?
About $40,000 a lot.
About $40,000 a lot. So those two lots, it would take $40,000 each or $80,000 to develop those two lots.
On average, yes.
On average. I'm curious, that lot size, if that was one lot instead of two, are you saying it's still an equivalent $80,000?
There is certainly an economy of scale and a discount that you would get on a smaller lot. However, there is other roads that have no lots on them that would count against it. And then the cost of buffers and some of the other items that you would amenity-wise that you would have to add to a conservation-type subdivision. There's probably a discount, but there probably is a discount. There certainly is a discount. It costs cheaper to build a 40,000 or a 65-foot or 70-foot lot than it does a 120-foot lot. There's no question in my mind. But on average, it's about $350 a linear foot to build a subdivision street. And then if you add detention ponds and buffers and HOA stuff that it takes, on average, that's the pro forma that developers and builders use, is somewhere in that ballpark.
The reason I ask is because if I was to build say a 2,200 square foot home versus a 2,800 square foot home right beside it, there's certain things that you don't have to spend twice if you're doing a bigger home versus the two little homes. Like you'd use one hot water heater instead of two hot water heaters. You see where I'm going with this? There's ways that building two separate structures, you're spending that cost twice. What I'm trying to wrap around in my head is the profitability versus a bunch of little bitty ones or a few big ones for the builder.
Oh.
I mean, I think what a lot of folks are having a hard time stomaching is the size of the lots and the size of the house.
Right.
Would that be I'm just getting some nods here. But if the lots were a little bigger and you only had to buy a certain number of things versus one for each of all the mini ones, it just seems like the profitability would be better with fewer lots, bigger houses, because I too am a contractor, and I know I can build something a little bit bigger, cheaper than I could build two of the same things twice.
Yeah, I understand, and unfortunately, that's one thing I don't know much about at all, is the vertical construction, the building costs, and how that works, other than I know generally what the lot size comes as a percentage of the total thing. But you may very well be right that that's the case. I couldn't speak for my client, who happens to be wear both hats in this project.
All right, any additional questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. If not, you may be seated.
Yes, sir.
All right. At this time, call the case, please.
RZ 1914, General Holdings Unlimited, LLC of Monroe, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to R3 Single Family Residence for property located at 1496 Millers Mill Road in land lots 27 and 28 of the 11th District. The property consists of 89.01 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a single-family residential subdivision. This is District 4, and the report was presented by Ms. Jewel Richardson, Planner 1.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve the applicant's request in accordance with the staff recommendations to approve, with the addition of the following conditions. That one, we amend staff recommendation number 5 to read that all homes shall be a minimum of 2,800 heated square feet. In addition, I would like to add condition number 7, that the minimum lot size shall be 18,000 square feet. And condition number 8, that the subdivision shall be governed by an HOA.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? No second. Motion fails with lack of a second. Do I?
I think it would be appropriate to ask for another motion, but if I can make a comment about the proposed condition requiring the 18,000 square feet, which is the minimum lot size in R3, would completely take off the table the option of it being a conservation subdivision, which this board had actually approved earlier in the night. So I just wanted to make that comment, but I do think it would be appropriate to ask for an alternate motion.
Okay.
May I ask
First motion failed due to a lack of a second. Do I have an additional motion? Once again, do I have an additional motion?
There is no motion for approval.
Do I? First motion failed due to lack of a second. Do I have an additional motion for Mr. Richard?
I make a motion to approve the rezoning to R2S and with the heated area of the homes being 2,800 square feet.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Well, I don't have a second on the second motion there.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be appropriate to consider that the recommendation would be for denial.
Due to lack of second, we have to move that the recommendation is denied.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Call the next case, please.
COMPAN 1902, John Jordan, Hedge Walker, PC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests an amendment to the comprehensive plan for property located east of Highway 1941 and west of Old Highway 3 and Old Griffin Road in land lots 109 and 84 of the 3rd District. The property consists of 40.0 plus or less acres, and the request is to amend the future land use map designation from commercial to mixed use. District 2, presented by Stacy Jordan Rudasil, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Board members. So this request before you tonight is the associated case to a previous case that we had heard. This is to consider an amendment to the future land use map for the subject property. This subject property is indicated in the overhead and also in your exhibit books. The future land use map, land use designation at this current time is for commercial. The applicant has requested a change from commercial to mixed use to support their rezoning request from C1 to mixed use. The planning staff has taken a look at the applicant's request. We've evaluated the applicant's request as noted in the staff report. We've noted the location on Highway 1941. We've noted the adjacent land uses, the county's plan, the initiative for the mega site just across 1941. We have actually taken a look at the rezoning request and how the applicant has indicated that the proposed development would complement the mega site. And so, taking all these things into consideration, we do recommend approval of the applicant's request. I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay. At this time, does the board have questions for staff? If not, we'd like to call the applicant forward. Please state your name and address again for the record.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. John Jordan with Hecht Walker PC, and I am here on behalf of the applicant. don't want to rehash what we've gone over before unless there's any questions. Definitely appreciate the board recommending approval pursuant to staff conditions of the rezoning request. This would allow us to move forward with that zoning request. It's a condition precedent to being able to rezone. We would request that the staff also move forward with, or that the board would move forward with staff's recommendation and approve this as well.
Does the board have questions for the applicant? No question for the applicant. You may be seated, sir. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case. Okay, if no one's coming forward, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Okay. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. All right. If not, call the case, please.
MP AM 1902, John Jordan, Hecht Walker, PC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests an amendment to the comprehensive plan for property located east of Highway 1941 and west of Old Highway 3 and Old Griffin Road in land lots 109 and 84 of the 3rd District. The property consists of 40.0 plus or minus acres, and the request is to amend the future land use map designation from commercial to mixed use. District 2, presented by Stacy Jordan Russell, Chief Planner.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board approves this request, COMP-AM 1902, as recommended by staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, I believe that completes our cases for tonight. All right, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So be it. Adjourn.